I had lived for 35 years without ever thinking that a family dinner could shatter everything I had ever believed in. The flickering candles on the dining table, the soft glow from the vintage chandelier, and the rich aroma of stew filling the air. All of it was a perfectly orchestrated trap. And I walked right into it, without a single shred of suspicion. My mother had called 2 weeks ago, her voice sweeter than usual. "Sophia, you should come home for dinner, it's been so long since the family gathered together." I hesitated. For over a decade I had grown accustomed to my parents' conditional affection. They only reached out when they needed something. But a part of me still wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. That they truly missed me. So, I drove from San Francisco to my childhood home in Sacramento, leaving behind my packed schedule and intense meetings. I arrived with hope, but just minutes after sitting down at the table, that hope shattered. Like a wine glass slipping from someone's hand and crashing onto the floor. To avoid any misunderstandings later, Mom and Dad want you to know now. Parker, my younger brother, spoke smoothly as if he had rehearsed it. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, his face barely concealing his satisfaction. Next to him, Olivia, my younger sister, twirled a golden strand of hair around her finger, a smirk playing on her lips, as if she had just won a grand bet. I set my fork down, suddenly finding the stew my mother had so carefully prepared harder to swallow than ever. "What?" I asked, my voice dry, but I forced myself to stay calm. My mother, the one who had invited me home with the promise of a warm evening, sighed softly. "Your father and I have finalized our will. This house, the lakefront villa in Tahoe, everything we own, will go to Parker and Olivia." Her words fell into the space between us like a knife slicing straight into my chest. I turned to my father, hoping, praying that he would refute this, that he would say it was just a cruel joke. But he only lowered his head, staring into his glass of wine, offering no disagreement. I took a deep breath, trying to find a thread of logic in this mess. And why? Parker shrugged, his voice laced with amusement. "Because you don't need it, right? You have your own company, your own house, a stable life. Mom and Dad think Olivia and I need the support more." "Support?" I scoffed, my laughter hollow. "What exactly do you mean by support? Olivia, you're 28 and haven't held a job for more than 6 months. Parker, how many times have you switched majors in college? 5? 6? And Mom and Dad have been paying for every single tuition fee." As I spoke, I felt my breath quicken, my heart pounding with fury. My mother crossed her arms, her gaze cold. "Sophia, there's no need to overreact. Your father and I have thought this through. You don't need these assets. But Parker and Olivia need a solid foundation to build their lives on." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "A foundation? And what about the money I spent helping you pay off the mortgage? The times I covered the utility bills and home repairs? What about the $40,000 I invested to renovate the Tahoe villa? Does no one remember that?" Olivia chuckled, her eyes full of mockery. "Oh, so you're keeping tabs on every penny? That's disappointing, Sophia. You're rich, do you really need to be so stingy?" I stared at her, unable to believe her audacity. "Stingy?" I emphasized each word. "No, Olivia, this is called fraud, this is called exploitation." My mother slammed her hand on the table so hard that the glasses nearly toppled over. "Enough, Sophia, stop acting like a victim. You always think about money. Always. We did this not because we don't love you, but because we love all of our children." Love. I felt a cold rage spreading through my chest. Parker leaned back, feigning sympathy. "You're acting like a child who just had their favorite toy taken away. Everyone here is an adult, Sophia. You should learn to accept reality." I said nothing. His words didn't infuriate me anymore, they only made me realize one thing. I had been deceived my entire life. They had never truly seen me as part of the family. I wasn't their daughter. I was their financial provider. Slowly I placed my hands on the table, gripping the edge of the tablecloth. I took a deep breath, letting the anger settle. When I looked up again, my gaze was ice cold. I understood now. They didn't need me, and I didn't need them. I had spent the last decade believing that family was a place of refuge, that no matter what happened, they would cherish me the way I cherished them. But the truth? I wasn't their daughter. I was an ATM. And now, that I was no longer useful, they were ready to discard me without a second thought. I stared at the faces in front of me. My mother, the one who called me every time a bill was due. My father, the man who never once opposed any of my mother's decisions, even when she treated me unfairly. Parker, the one who had burned through an endless amount of my money on courses he never completed. Olivia, the one who had never worked a serious job a single day in her life, yet had enough designer clothes to fill 3 rooms. I laughed, but not out of amusement. My voice dripped with bitterness. And what about the money I spent on all of you? Does no one think that deserves any recognition? My mother crossed her arms, her gaze sharp as a razor. Sophia, all you ever talk about is money. No amount is ever enough for you, is it? I felt my throat go dry. Never enough? I repeated, almost whispering. I've been paying the mortgage on this house for the past 6 years. I was the only one who stepped up to take on the loan when you were on the verge of bankruptcy. I also paid for the renovations on the Tahoe villa because you said you wanted to keep it as a family asset. And now, I'm not even considered part of this family. Olivia shrugged, raising an eyebrow with mock indifference. No one forced you, Sophia. You just like playing the hero. That sentence felt like a slap to my face. You're right, no one forced me. I met her green eyes, searching for even a trace of remorse, but finding only ridicule. I did it, because I thought family was supposed to support each other. But I was wrong. I was the only one making sacrifices, while the rest of you only knew how to take. Parker scoffed. You're acting just like a child who lost their favorite toy. I felt the rage building in my chest. A toy? I enunciated each word, feeling the heat rise to my face. I've spent nearly $500,000 helping this family over the past decade. I put my dreams on hold, passed up chances to travel, to buy a bigger home, to invest in my own future. All so that you wouldn't have to struggle. And now, you call me greedy just because I asked for a little fairness? My mother shook her head, sighing as if I were some pitiful fool who couldn't understand reason. Family is about love, Sophia, not money. I let out a hollow laugh. Love? I looked around the room. The house I had poured so much time and money into maintaining. If that were true, then why does love only seem to matter when it comes from me? Why am I always the one making sacrifices? No one answered. No one ever answered that question. A cold silence filled the room. I could see it in their eyes. They felt no guilt. They didn't think they had exploited me, they were just annoyed that I dared to demand fairness. A sharp pain clenched in my chest. Why had I ever thought they would change? I took a deep breath and stood up. The chair scraped against the hardwood floor, the screeching sound cutting through the tense air. I've heard enough, I said coldly. I'm done. My mother blinked. What did you just say? I met her gaze, my words slow and deliberate. I'm done. I have no more obligations to any of you. Parker laughed, but there was something uneasy in his tone. What? You're going to cut off the family just like that? I stared at him, unblinking. Yes. And you'll soon understand exactly what that means. I turned on my heel, not waiting for their reaction. My mother's voice rang out behind me, sharp and frantic. Sophia, what the hell are you doing? Family is supposed to stick together. You can't just cut us off over a little disagreement. I paused, a smirk curling on my lips. But this time, it was ice cold. A little disagreement? I repeated, then turned back, my eyes like steel. This isn't a little disagreement. This is betrayal. I walked swiftly toward the door, but before I crossed the threshold, my mother's voice rang out one last time, filled with anger and warning. If you walk out that door, Don't ever think about coming back. I didn't stop. I didn't need to go back. I had all the answers I needed. Driving back to San Francisco, I felt my chest tighten, as if a boulder was pressing down on me. My mind spun with the bitter words from dinner, the disdainful looks from Olivia, Parker's smug smirk, and the suffocating silence of my parents. The buildings blurred past my car window, the streetlights stretching endlessly along the boulevard like hollow streaks of light. I used to call that house my family, but now, it was nothing more than a black hole that had swallowed every ounce of my effort and love. When I got back to my apartment, I tossed my bag onto the couch, poured myself a glass of wine, and sank into the sofa. A long sigh escaped my lips. I didn't even have the energy to be angry anymore. Only exhaustion and weariness remained. Then, I opened my banking app. $2,100 per month. That was how much I had been paying for them all these years. $1,500 for the mortgage. $600 for utilities. Electricity, water, internet, maintenance. Not to mention all the extra expenses, Parker's tuition, the expensive gifts my mother suggested during the holidays, the vacations they invited me on, only for me to end up paying for everything. A wave of betrayal surged through me, burning hot and thick in my throat. I had poured everything into this family like a fool, while to them, I was nothing more than a walking wallet. I tapped the Cancel Recurring Payments button. The screen flashed, confirming the cancellation. I stared at the words, "Successfully cancelled," and an unfamiliar sense of relief washed over me. It felt as if I had just severed an invisible chain that had bound me for years. But I knew they wouldn't let this go easily. The first call came the next morning. My mother's number, I ignored it. The second call. The third. The fourth. She didn't give up. By the fifth, I silenced my phone and let it go to voicemail. I made myself a cup of coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and checked my messages. "Mom, Sophia, I can't believe you did this. Do you have any idea how much the house is struggling? Mom, don't be so selfish. Family is supposed to help each other. Mom, call me back." I set my cup down, closed my eyes, and took a deep breath. I figured she had found out by now. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was my father. I stared at the screen, feeling my heart sink. If it had been in the past, I would have answered immediately, but now? I knew he wasn't calling to defend me. I let it go to voicemail. A while later, I played the message. "Dad, Sophia. You need to reconsider. Your mother is very upset. You can't just cut ties over a small misunderstanding. We're family." I let out a hollow laugh. Family? If I was really family, why hadn't they ever stood by me? In the afternoon, Olivia called. I declined. A second later, her texts came in. "Olivia, absolutely pathetic, Sophia. You're such a petty and selfish person. Olivia, do you really think you're better than us? If you didn't want to help, you should have said so from the start instead of pretending to be the good one. Olivia, you've destroyed this family. Congratulations." I laughed. A dry, bitter laugh. Did they really believe I was the one in the wrong? Then, Parker called. This time, I answered. "Me, what?" "Parker, what the hell do you think you're doing?" "Me, taking back what's mine." Parker. "You're disgusting, Sophia. You cut off support for mom and dad just because they didn't leave you any inheritance? You're nothing but a greedy leech." Me, "This isn't about money, Parker, it's about respect. Something I never got from any of you." Parker, "You're a venomous snake. You think you can abandon this family without consequences? Just wait." He hung up before I could say another word. A cold shiver ran down my spine. They weren't going to stop. I stared at my phone, then at my contact list. Each name, Mom, Dad, Olivia, Parker, glowed on the screen. The people who had relied on me their entire lives, only to turn on me the moment I stopped providing. Not a single one of them regretted anything. Not a single one of them said, "I'm sorry." All they had to offer was anger, threats, and insults. I gripped my phone tightly, then slowly pressed block number. One by one their names faded, disappearing from my contact list. For the first time in years, I felt peace. I knew they would try to come back, but at least for tonight, I could sleep without the weight of their demands and accusations pressing down on me. I set my phone down, took a sip of wine, and for the first time in years, I smiled. I was free. 3 weeks passed in a dangerous silence. After blocking their numbers, I had enjoyed a rare period of peace. No more guilt-tripping calls. No more blame-filled messages. No more relentless demands. I focused on work, built new routines, and for the first time in years, I lived without the suffocating weight of obligation. But I wasn't naive enough to think it was over. And I was right. On Friday afternoon, as I sat in a conference room waiting for a client presentation, my phone buzzed violently. A message from my mother. "Mom, Sophia, the family is having an important meeting. You need to be there, 7 p.m. the old house. This is not an invitation, it's your responsibility." Family meeting. I closed my eyes, irritation flaring inside me. This wasn't a goodwill gesture, this was an ambush. I could ignore it. I could go on with my new life. But some foolish part of me, some part that still stupidly believed in miracles, wanted to see what they would do next. I sent back a single word. Fine. When I arrived, Parker's BMW and Olivia's obnoxiously pink Mini Cooper were already neatly parked in the driveway. As I stepped onto the porch, my mother opened the door almost instantly, a fake smile plastered on her face. "Sophia, you finally decided to come home." I stepped inside. The once familiar house now felt suffocating. My father sat in the center of the living room, his face serious. Parker and Olivia lounged on the couch, their eyes glinting with triumph. Something was very wrong. Slowly I pulled out a chair, sat down, crossed my legs, and folded my arms. "So," I said flatly, "what is this about?" My father cleared his throat, his gaze sharp. "We need to resolve this tension." I let out a dry chuckle. "Tension? You mean the fact that I stopped paying for all of you?" My mother exhaled, trying to keep her voice gentle. "Sophia, you overreacted. Your father and I only wanted what was best for you." Parker scoffed. "Did you even think, before cutting us off like that? Do you not see how childish and selfish that was?" I clenched my jaw. Childish? Selfish? My voice was dangerously low. "I have kept this family afloat for over a decade. If anyone here is selfish, it's all of you." Olivia crossed her arms, her voice soft but laced with poison. "You're acting like a victim. But let's be real. You're just mad because Mom and Dad didn't leave you an inheritance, aren't you?" A cold fury burned in my chest. I slowly stood up, my gaze sweeping across each of their faces. "I came here because I thought maybe you had finally realized what you did wrong." I let out a sharp laugh. "But no, you're still the same leeches, selfish, ungrateful." My mother shot up from her seat, her voice sharp as a blade. "If you walk out that door, don't expect to be welcomed back." I stopped at the doorway, my hand gripping the doorknob. I turned my head, locking eyes with her, my voice cold as ice. "I never felt welcome here in the first place." Then I opened the door and walked away without looking back. I drove home, my heart pounding against my ribs. I didn't know what they would do next, but I knew they wouldn't let it go. And just as I expected, the moment I arrived at my apartment, I froze. My door was sealed shut. A thick layer of grayish-white expanding foam covered the entire doorframe, spilling over the edges, hardened like cement. Someone had deliberately sabotaged my home. I didn't need to ask who. My grip tightened around my phone, fury boiling in my veins. I opened my security camera app, my pulse racing as I rewound the footage. There he was. Wearing a gray hoodie and a baseball cap, grinning smugly as he held a can of expanding foam, spraying it all over my door. My hands clenched into fists. Did they really think they could intimidate me? Did they think I would crawl back, begging for forgiveness? No. I wasn't letting them get away with this. I stood in front of my sealed door, my breath heavy with anger. I wasn't shocked, nothing about them could surprise me anymore. But I was furious. Not because of their childish antics, but because of their arrogance. The sheer stupidity of thinking they could do this and face no consequences. I reopened the security app and fast-forwarded through the footage. Just as I suspected, Parker appeared on the screen. Wearing a gray hoodie, his cap pulled low to hide his face, but I recognized his lazy gait. I recognized the smug smirk as he aimed the nozzle at my door, flooding every crevice with foam. Every movement was an insult. He did this because he thought I wouldn't fight back. He was wrong. Calmly I saved the video, took clear screenshots of his face, and immediately called the police. 30 minutes later, a young police officer stood in front of my apartment, his expression a mix of sympathy and professionalism. I showed him the footage, explaining the situation in crisp detail. "Do you want to file a formal complaint?" he asked, his tone neutral but hesitant, as if hoping I would let it slide. I let out a cold chuckle. "I didn't call you here for a friendly chat." He nodded, flipping open his notebook to start an official report. "Parker, that's your brother, right?" I met his gaze, my voice ice cold. "Not anymore." The next morning, my father called. "Dad. Sophia, sweetheart, does this really have to go this far?" Me. "Are you calling to ask me to drop the charges?" Dad. "It's not that. It's just. Parker was just upset. He didn't mean any harm." Me. Scoffs. "No harm, he sealed my door shut, Dad. What if I had an important meeting this morning? What if I had a cat or a child inside?" Dad. Silence. Me. "He thought he could intimidate me. I'll show him he picked the wrong person." Dad. "Do you really want to push this that far?" Me. "It's not me. Parker did this. If he didn't want consequences, he shouldn't have acted like a reckless idiot." Dad. "What do you want to drop the charges?" Me. $33,000. Dad. "What?" Me. "That covers the cost of repairing my door, legal fees if this drags out, and damages for harassment. I'd say that's a pretty reasonable number." Dad. "This is extortion." Me. Chuckled coldly. "No, Dad, this is consequences." Dad. "Parker doesn't have that kind of money." Me. "Then you and Mom can help him out. You've been covering for him his whole life. This is just one more time." Dad. Claudine gripped the Sophia. "You're tearing this family apart." Me. "This family tore itself apart a long time ago." 3 days later my account received exactly $33,000, transferred from my parents' joint account. No messages from my mother. No complaints from Parker. Even Olivia, who relished every opportunity to be cruel, was completely silent. They thought that sending the money would make me go away. But what they didn't understand was this. I didn't need them anymore. I stood in front of my apartment door, now fully repaired, my fingers running over the smooth surface. The $33,000 wasn't the important part. What mattered was that, for the first time, they had been forced to take responsibility for their actions. They could hate me, they could call me a traitor. But for the first time in my life, they couldn't force me to obey. I smirked, taking a sip of wine. They thought they could break me. But in the end, they were the ones who lost. I had thought that after sending the $33,000, they would finally leave me alone. But I had given them too much credit. Losing money was one thing. Losing control? That, they couldn't handle. And when they could no longer manipulate me with their usual tricks, they played dirty. It started with a flood of hypocritical messages from distant relatives, whose faces I could barely remember. "Aunt Susan, Sophia, I'm very disappointed in you. Your parents sacrificed their whole lives for you, and this is how you repay them? Uncle Mark, Sophia, don't let money make you lose your humanity. Remember, family is forever." Cousin Rachel, I can't believe you're heartless enough to abandon your parents like this. They're about to lose their home, don't you feel any guilt? I read each message, feeling both amused and disgusted. I knew exactly who was behind this. Mom. She couldn't win against me with logic, so she used the fear of social judgment to attack me instead. She had spun an entirely new narrative. One where I was the ungrateful daughter, abandoning my poor aging parents. So greedy and heartless that I cut off all financial support, leaving them on the brink of losing their home. A perfect sob story. Except for one problem. It wasn't true. I had carried their financial burdens for over a decade. I had paid their mortgage, covered their bills, funded Parker and Olivia. Without ever asking for anything in return. They weren't abandoned. They had used me. And I was done. I opened my laptop and logged into Facebook. I didn't post often, but today would be an exception. I didn't need them to love me anymore. I just needed them to lose the ability to twist the truth. My fingers moved swiftly across the keyboard, each word appearing on the screen, sharp, clear, leaving no room for deception. I tried to be a good daughter, but they never truly loved me. For over 10 years I paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for my parents, covering their mortgage, bills, and even my siblings' tuition. I never complained, because I believed families should support each other. But when my parents wrote their will, they left everything to Parker and Olivia. When I asked why, their answer was, because you have a career, you don't need it. When I protested, they called me selfish. When I stopped financing them, they called me a traitor. And now, they are spreading lies that I abandoned them, that they are about to lose their home, that I am a heartless daughter. Here's the truth. They are not losing their home, they are only losing the free financial support I provided for years. I'm not sharing this for sympathy, I'm sharing it for anyone else who has been exploited by their own family to know this. You do not have to keep suffering. Setting boundaries is not ungrateful. Refusing to be used is not betrayal. And sometimes, family isn't defined by blood, but by those who truly respect and appreciate you. I have walked away from their lives. And I have no regrets. I hit post. Within an hour, the post had hundreds of shares and thousands of comments. Some were supportive. I've been in your position, stay strong. You don't owe them anything. You've done more than enough. I admire your courage for speaking out. Others were critical. Family may be flawed, but they're still family. Don't air out your dirty laundry like this. She's just looking for attention. Shameful to expose your own parents like this. I didn't care. I expected this. 3 hours after I posted the truth, my mother called. Mom. Sophia, what the hell are you doing? Me, calmly telling the truth. Mom. You're destroying this family's reputation. Me. No, Mom. You did that the moment you decided to turn me into the villain in your story. Mom. You're going to regret this. Me. No. You're the one who will regret it. I hung up, feeling lighter than ever. They couldn't hide the truth anymore. And for the first time, I had taken back my voice. 3 months after exposing the truth, I had never felt so free. No more guilt-tripping messages, no more heavy phone calls. No one could manipulate me anymore. I was finally living for myself. At first, the emptiness was strange. Losing a family, no matter how toxic, still left an odd void. But then I realized it wasn't a loss. It was freedom. I threw myself into my career, leaving behind the chaos of my past. With no one leeching off my income, my money was mine. Completely. I signed up for a photography class, something I had never dared to make time for before. I started traveling, exploring the places I had always put off because I was too busy helping my family. 3 months later, I was in Paris, sipping coffee by the Seine. 6 months later, I stood atop Machu Picchu, feeling the fierce wind rush through the ancient ruins. For the first time in my life, I was responsible for no one but myself. And it was worth more than any inheritance. I didn't follow them anymore. but news of my old family still found its way to me, through old acquaintances, through whispers in the community. My mother had taken a job as a waitress at a small diner. A former co-worker of hers happened to see her and said she no longer carried the aura of a woman who once ordered me around. She wasn't spending money on spas or designer clothes anymore. My father, the man who had stayed silent through every injustice I endured, was now working as a laborer at a construction supply store. He had no one left to rely on, no one to pay his bills for him anymore. Parker was unemployed. He had laughed at me when I walked away, but now, there was no one left to fund his failed startup ventures. Olivia was still trapped in her delusion, desperately trying to become a social media star. But no one was paying for her vacations anymore. No one was buying her designer outfits to flaunt on Instagram. My entire family was struggling. But I didn't feel guilty. I had given them a chance. And they ruined it with their own greed. A year later, I met Alex. I had never been looking for love. But he came into my life like a quiet breeze, demanding nothing, expecting nothing. He wasn't like the people I had known before. He wasn't someone who only saw me for what I could give them. He saw me. Truly saw me. We met during a hiking trip with mutual friends. At first I thought he was just like everyone else, another passing stranger. But then he listened, patiently, without ever demanding anything from me except me. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I had to prove my worth. I didn't have to buy love. I only had to be myself. Standing on my apartment balcony, on a December evening, I looked down at the city lights shimmering below. No one controlled me anymore. No one exploited me anymore. I didn't need my old family anymore. I once thought being cut out of the will was humiliation, a betrayal. But now, I realized, it was the greatest gift they had ever given me. Sophia's story isn't just a tale of family betrayal. It's the journey of someone who once believed that sacrifice would bring love and recognition. The truth is, many people find themselves trapped in the cycle of being used by the very people who should cherish them the most. But this story proves that setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's self-respect. Sometimes, losing a toxic family isn't a loss. It's an opportunity to find freedom, happiness, and the people who truly value you. What do you think about Sophia's story? Have you ever experienced something similar or known someone who has? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow the channel for more shocking, heartfelt, and real stories about family and life.